powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher is in the house today. We talk a little birds as they get out of the combine and into free agency. Draft season, off season is here. Geoff Mosher is here, and we talk a little Eagles and NFL, of course, on a very busy day in the NFL. A lot of news coming down. There's Geoff Mosher. He's with me here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Moshe?
Hey, Mike. What's going on, man?
All is well, man.
Big day in the NFL. Big day.
Yes, a lot going on. We'll touch on some of these NFL stories, get your thoughts on what's happening. Let's go around Birdland, though, and see what's happening there. Thoughts on this Denard Wilson? I guess just the domino effect of, you lose your coordinator, you hire someone else, but this is kind of an interesting situation that's happening here that could kind of have some ripple effects.
Well, I think the term that I used last week on the phone with you was collateral damage, meaning Nick Sirianni made a decision to hire Sean Desai, a guy with play calling experience, defensive coordinator experience, and very well regarded around the league. And Nick said, you have to do what's best for the team. At the podium in Indianapolis, and he even alluded to the fact that they would love to have Denard Wilson back. And you only say that if you know that Denard's not happy and considering other options. And so, don't exactly know what – I know there's some reports out there. I don't know if it was like a confrontation or a discussion. But, clearly hiring Sean Desai created this scenario. But if Sean Desai was the best man for the job, then you've got to expect that scenarios like these will happen where your secondary coach who is a candidate is not happy or that he is looking elsewhere, whatever it was. But I don't know that Nick had to fire him either. I mean, he might have been disgruntled, but now you've left yourself without a defensive backs coach. I know they're saying mutual parting. To me, that means firing. So that's my own spin on it. Mm-hmm. So,
I was going to say, there is a report. Marcus Hayes had said he basically got fired, and it was not an amicable split here. That Wilson wanted to stay, and he was basically not welcomed back.
Yeah, got to find out a little bit more about what went on there. But I support making the best decision for your team. I'd like to get a little bit more into what happened there to see why this happened. But one thing we see about Nick, like we know on the field, he's very passionate. You can say he's a hothead because he is on the field. I would like to think that, he's a calm, rational person behind the scenes when he has to be. Seems to have done a good job this year of, navigating a lot of big egos in the locker room. So I hope that isn't the case where he kind of lost his cool because he knew his secondary coach wasn't happy with the situation. But, we talked about this last week, though, with Denard. You're going to get passed up for jobs in this industry no matter who you are. So you also have to kind of understand that and be professional about it. So yeah. I don't know.
Well, and I guess the question is, how popular was he and how much of a ripple effect, I think was what, the term you used, how much of a ripple effect will there be from guys in the secondary? Now, some of those guys in the secondary might not be back. I mean, there's a good possibility. Heck, you might only have one of those guys back here next year. Really, I mean, two if you want to count Maddox and I guess Blankenship. Right. But is that a concern moving forward that hey, these guys are so turned off by this?
Well, I mean, then if you want to sandwich that with the idea that the one guy you might have back out of those four, Darius Slay, doesn't seem to be too thrilled about the fact that a incoming coach could be Matt Patricia, who he clearly feuded with in Detroit and has made no secret about that, then it's sort of like a double whammy. So a lot of things to work out here. Look, time heals, cooler heads prevail. To me, it's more about you had a really good secondary coach. Now, you may have a good defensive coordinator now, but you lost your linebackers coach and haven't yet replaced him. And you lost now your defensive backs coach, your assistant defensive backs coach, DK McDonald, only has been in the NFL for 2 years. He was at Iowa State and in college level for 18 years, but he's sort of relatively young to the NFL level. I'm told that DK is kind of a quiet guy, whereas Denard had a presence, was powerful. Like you said, the team respected him. His players respected him. He did a good job with the secondary this year. There's no question about it. And it just sort of feels like, in this season of change that these are losses that are tougher to compensate for than others.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Patricia. Let's what is the his name is being surfacing around the team as what? What is it? What are they potentially looking to bring him in here to do?
Right. So when we were at the combine, Adam and I, last week, and they had hired Sean Desai, we both through good sourcing got that Sean wanted to bring in a linebackers coach who had veteran experience, right? Got that from a couple of people. And then when we, did more homework on it, some of the feedback we got from people who knew Sean was, keep an eye out for Mike Pettin and Matt Patricia. So I tweeted once something along those lines about Mike Pettin. Why did I not tweet about Matt Patricia? Because at the time I was able to double confirm that Pettin was a guy that Sean Desai, had interest in, or that would want the Eagles to show interest in. But Pettin's an assistant head coach for the Vikings. That's a pretty prominent position. So it was always kind of an uphill battle to figure out a way to get him over to be, an Eagles coach. By the way, he has linebackers experience. That's sort of also why the interest was there. But yeah, it would have been difficult for him. And it sounds like he's going to wind up staying in Minnesota based on what I've heard. So Patricia, I couldn't double confirm, but then yesterday, obviously, a report came out from Boston, Karen Greige, and she's covered the Patriots for as long as I can remember. Now, her report was that
Sounds like Mosher's frozen here for a second. We'll try to get him back here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. It's like I can see him trying to, we still communicate via the video stream in the background, and I think it maybe he just froze up there for a second. We'll see if we can get him back. I think it's his video is reloading for us there. Can we get? Oh, there we go. I think you're back. You back now? You got me? I see your eyes blinking.
Yes. Did you miss a whole lot of what I said there?
We lost you right when you were talking about the reporter from New England who has been around the team for a while.
Right. So her tweet said that presumably it was Eagles' interest was for linebackers coach. Now, maybe that's the case, but from what we understood, he was looking for someone who's not just a linebackers coach, but has, someone you can say is as a senior member of the staff. I don't think Sean's looking for a guy who's coached linebackers for a year or doesn't have much experience, right? So if he does come here, Matt Patricia, you might see something like senior defensive assistant / linebackers coach. Maybe it is just linebackers coach, but they clearly were looking for someone who had a lot of experience.
I'll tell you what, he's an interesting guy. I mean, he was good enough to get himself a head coaching job, which did not go very well. Now, last year he had a weird situation. He was calling the offense out there, wasn't he?
Yeah, and that worked about as well as Juan Castillo calling the defense here in Philly in 2010 and 11. So,
right.
Yeah, he belongs on the defensive side of the ball. And look, I mean, before he was a Lions head coach, there were only positive things to hear about Matt Patricia, how bright he was. I think he was, what was he like? I know he had like some kind of engineering degree in college or something. He was like a brain surgeon. I don't know, some very smart guy. He obviously did not do a good job of relating to his players in Detroit as a head coach. It wasn't just Darius Slay who had issues with him. Now, I don't know if that experience humbled him. I really don't know. I mean, Josh McDaniels went through it with Denver. He went back to New England and did a pretty damn good job as a offensive coordinator there. We're just talking about being a linebackers coach here. So I think some of the fear and the panic and the concern might be a little overstated. Now, look, you want a good guy, and this coaching staff had really good people on it. And if this guy comes and he's not a good guy, well, then of course it's problematic. But again, he's not even like your defensive coordinator, he's your linebackers coach.
Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. Thoughts on the combine done? There's been a lot of discussion about a running back at number 10. Is that something that you think would even be explored at all by this organization?
I mean, you can't totally slam the door on it because, we know in 2017, Christian McCaffrey, if he had fallen there, Eagles would have taken him. But you look at this roster. Well, first of all, if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, that pushes 6 non-quarterback prospects that become available to the Eagles. And there's going to be some deep pass rushers. There's going to be some offensive linemen. And there's going to be some cornerbacks. So the question is, would the Eagles take Bijan Robinson ahead of a corner, a pass rusher, a D tackle, or an offensive lineman that that is equally rated or just as highly rated, because sometimes guys from different positions carry the same ranking, or the same type of grading. So that's where I struggle to see the Eagles doing that. I'll never say never, but I don't think it's very likely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back and forth on this because, look, are the Eagles, and I know that we've talked about this a lot, are they a best player available type of team? Yes, right?
Generally.
If he's on the board at number 10, it's going to be hard for me to believe he's not the best player ranked on anybody's board.
Well, again, I mean, he's the running back, so it's splashy. But, when you're evaluating Bijan Robinson versus, say, Paris Johnson, I'm just going to throw out a name, versus Devin Witherspoon, how do you grade the top running back versus the top cornerback versus the top offensive lineman?
Fair.
You can't. It's not an apples to apples. So that's generally when in all your pre-draft meetings and all your scenarios, you're going through, what if this happens? Who do we take? What if this happens? Who do we take? So I could more see the Eagles trading down if someone wanted to come up to get Bijan Robinson. And does someone really want to come up to get a running back? There's very few teams. There's very few Dave Gettlemans in this league anymore. And Dave Gettleman's not in this league anymore. So, the Cowboys aren't picking top 10 this year. So, I mean, who else picks running backs that high?
That leads me into my next conversation is who else takes running backs that high is a fair question. The Eagles are at 30. If he's on the board at 30, you almost have to take him, right?
Oh, God, yeah, of course. But he won't be. He won't be there. Because most teams, Mike, don't have 32 first-round picks.
Okay,
right?
so then what's the line? What's the line of demarcation then if he falls and he's at 15, 20, where you say, I want to move up to try to get this guy because he's still there?
Yeah, so that's possible. Again, if teams are willing to give up something like in draft comp to move up for a running back, it's rare, but it might happen because he is a special athlete. Here's what might happen. He's a blue chip player in a draft that's not filled with a ton of blue chip players. No team ever has 32 guys ranked as first round picks. That's just the reality of it. I know fans don't understand that sometimes, but the truth is teams generally have about 12 to 15 players each year that they consider first rounders. That's why sometimes you'll see a team take a player, 17th overall, and we'll get, like the Eagles might, and we'll get information. Well, they had a round 2 grade. They reached. No, it doesn't mean they reached. It just meant that they were out of guys that they had classified as first-round picks. So you have to take your next tier of players at that point. And if you didn't have a first-round grade, too bad. He's your highest second-round graded guy. And that's the way it works. So Bijan Robinson is probably going to be a guy who teams have ranked as a top 10, 12 prospect. But he may fall past that because of the emphasis on quarterbacks and pass rushers nonetheless. So I do think 12 to 15 to 18 is somewhere in that strike zone of where he'll probably go.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because, and you talk about which teams would draft a running back. I'm just looking at 25 where the Giants are. I mean, they've shown that they'll draft a running back, but that's a different regime. Remember, absolutely. But if they let Saquon Barkley walk, don't you almost have to replace him? I mean, he's their whole offense.
Yeah, but if I told you the Eagles' plans of replacing Miles Sanders were going to be have Kenneth Gainwell, have Trey Sermon, sign someone like Alexander Mattison for a year, do you think, are you scared? Are you worried? No, you're probably not, right? And I think the Giants really like, obviously, Saquon Barkley, but I feel like I'm sure they think that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and that if there's any position that they had to replace with other players that are of lesser value but can still be good players, it would be running back.
Definitely. Okay, so I guess the next question is Bijan Robinson that special of a player that you make an exception?
All right. He is, but I don't know. I feel like Daniel Jeremiah said this, and I think it makes a ton of sense. It's great to take you if you're a really good team like the Eagles, and he made a compelling argument for why the Eagles could take him, right? You know that if you're a good team, you can put Bijan Robinson in your offense, cost control for 4 years, and be a Super Bowl contender because he's that good. If you're a crappy team like the Giants were when they took Saquon Barkley, you basically waste the best cost control years of the guy's life, and then you get all this mileage and toll taken on his body so that by the time it's time to pay him, he's been through 2 injuries, he's taken a billion hits, and you don't know if he's going to be as good going forward as he was when he was healthy. So that's the question. As you look at like the Lions are a team that draft where? They're a pretty good team, and they draft high because they got the extra pick from the Rams. So maybe they are the type of team, even though they already have Jamal Williams and they've got DeAndre Swift, maybe they make some maneuvers there and say, man, you put Bijan Robinson onto us and we're really, really good. We've already started building this roster and we're going to be good next year. And he puts us over the top. But if you're a terrible team and the team that has a lot more needs, are you going to take Bijan Robinson like the Giants did a couple of years ago? Are you going to do that if you're the Texans? Are you going to do that if you're I'm trying to think who else is that, like the Raiders? You're going to get rid of Josh Jacobs and then just put Bijan Robinson there and think your problems are solved? You're going to do it if you're the Falcons? No. Like I don't see that.
Well, and that's why Philadelphia comes into the equation is because, well, they're interesting because they're going to have a lot of holes potentially to fill on defense after free agency begins. But if they had their defense intact or brought back a lot of those guys, then you start to say, well, now can I draft a guy because I have this luxury extra first-round pick, and do I get this player who's a special player?
Yeah, man, if the Eagles weren't losing 20 free agents, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. If the Eagles didn't have that many free agents, including like 8 starters, then maybe I would look at that 10th pick as a luxury pick and agree that there you go, pounce on Bijan Robinson. But we'll see how it all shakes out. If they can't keep a majority of these guys, and Howie Roseman's comments certainly suggested it, then it's not as much as a luxury pick because you have a whole defense that you're going to have to rebuild. If they do keep more guys than they think, then maybe you start to look at that pick as a luxury pick. At the end of the day, I think they would love to trade down because they have no picks. From round 4, 5, and 6, right? No picks in
nothing
in those middle. Yeah, nothing. That's Howie. Like Howie can't go that long without a pick. You know that. So he'll just start like scratching at his neck, and it'll be very dangerous. You got to get this guy some picks. So I think he would love to trade down. The question is again, if all 4 quarterbacks are gone by 10, what are people moving up for? Pass rusher, maybe.
Yes, and that obviously did you write this? Was that you about the possibility about drafting a corner finally at 10?
I did write that last week.
So, well, good job.
Thank you.
Joey Porter, Witherspoon. I mean, that would be uncharacteristic of them, wouldn't it be?
It would, but it wouldn't. It's not a position that they've devalued. It's just a position that they've done a terrible job drafting at. They haven't drafted him in the first round. Again, that's not a devalue thing because they had a lot of interest in Patrick Surtain. They love J.C. Horn. They almost went up. They wanted to go up and get Surtain. He was gone, and then they went up and got Devontae Smith that year. So I know that they've been willing to draft corners in the first round. We know they put a huge offer out to Byron Jones a couple of years ago, and thankfully he didn't take it because that made them go out and trade for Darius Slay, or else they probably wouldn't have been in the Super Bowl this year. So they value that position. So to me, that tells me that they're not afraid to take one in the first. It's not like safety or linebacker for them. They realize corner is important. They've just done a piss poor job for the last 20 years of trying to develop the ones that they've drafted in the second and the third rounds.
Yeah. By the way, Andrew, who's going to be on Thursday's show, he wrote about the Eagles speaking to running back prospects at the draft. So it's a position that, to keep an eye on draft day. Finally, Tony Pollard franchise tag. How does that kind of factor into Miles Sanders' free agency here?
Yeah, you have that like little totem pole, right? And it pushes him up one more rung toward being the number 1 running back free agent on the market. And if Josh Jacobs gets franchise tagged or extended, and if Saquon Barkley gets the tag or extended, then Miles Sanders is right there at the top. So that any team looking for a running back now has, all right, well, you're crossing off Pollard, you're crossing off Jacobs, and you're saying, hey, Miles Sanders is available. And we've got money. Let's go pay him. Now, I saw Leonard Fournette today got released. I don't think he leapfrogs over Miles Sanders either. So that just helps out Miles Sanders, and it does not help out the Eagles, who, again, maybe they want to bring him back at a much more favorable number than what the market might be.
A lot of interesting stuff. Next Monday, legal tampering begins. We will start to get some answers to these questions. And the guys at Inside the Birds, they will be writing about it, talking about it. Check out the podcast. And, of course, right here on Football at 4 tomorrow, Adam Kaplan is back as we take a look at this offseason, some combine thoughts as well. All right, Geoff Mosher, good to see you, bud.
All right, Mike. Be good.
All right, there's Geoff Mosher, of course, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast.